Get accepted by the best. At getaccepted.org.
Hi, I'm Holly Asposto. I'm the owner of Selective College Acceptance Counseling and the website getaccepted.org. Here today to talk with you about the 2014-2015 core essay prompts on the Common Application. The essay prompts this year are the first one, which I call the Breakfast Club Question. And it says, some students have a background or story that is so central to their identity that they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. The second prompt I call the Rebel Question. And it reads, reflect on a time when you challenged a belief or idea, what prompted you to act, and would you make the same decision again? The third prompt I call the Zen Question. This is, by the way, the most commonly answered question, and it is describe a place or environment where you are perfectly content. What do you experience there, and why is it meaningful to you? The last question I call the Rite of Passage question, and it reads, discuss an accomplishment or event, formal or informal, that marked your transition from childhood to adulthood within your culture, community, or family. So most students, when they read through these questions, are filled with anxiety and panic. So I want to try to help you think about these questions in a different light. And think about not only the opportunity that's presented there, but also what some of the traps might be. So looking at that first question, the Breakfast Club question, the reason why I call it that is because if you remember the letter at the end of the Breakfast Club movie, where the student was writing and saying that the vice president of the school saw kids in the most simplest of terms. He saw them as a jock or a princess or an outcast, and that was not really who they are. I think that if you take that approach to the question, it can actually be quite good. That you can talk about that you are more than the combination of what you appear to be on paper. So an interesting way to think about this question is, let's say that you're a jock, okay? And so whatever, you've been captain of the football team, and maybe you're even getting into college on a football scholarship. What colleges are expecting you to talk about is the importance that football has played in your life. And that answer is going to be expected, it's going to be cliche, and it's not going to likely get you a good result. What you want to be looking for is that something else about you that they don't know. Maybe you have a passion for politics. Maybe you play guitar. Maybe you volunteer for Big Brothers Big Sisters. But something that they wouldn't guess by looking at the rest of your application. The next question I call the Edison Question. The reason why I call it that is because, of course, Thomas Edison said that he failed, 1,097 times before he created the light bulb. And it is this question about failure. Most students avoid this question like the plague because the last thing you want to tell colleges is about a time that you failed. However, I think there can be a very powerful story there if you avoid the blame game, if you take responsibility for the failure. Even think about, okay, so I worked with a student a couple years ago, and she actually participated in mathlete competitions, and she got all the way up to the national competition, and she lost. Now that is an interesting story about failure. And to talk about the disappointment and working through that, and then finding the courage to try again. And that student, by the way, is at Cornell, so big picture, she's not failing. But as I said, just be careful. If you're still bitter about the failure, or if you still think it was someone else's fault, don't write about it. It's not going to make you look good. The next question, the rebel question, I think of that, you don't want to come across as James Dean, which is like a rebel without a cause. So it asks you to talk about a time where you challenged a belief or idea. I would caution you here from being overly political. I don't think you want to take a stand on, say, abortion or maybe gun control because you don't know what the politics of the people that are reading it are, and you don't really know the politics of the culture of the university. So you might be thinking about a time where you stood up for a kid that was being bullied. That's always, or you might talk about a time where you stood up against, you know, a bunch of guys that were picking on a girl, or maybe there was some racism in your school and you worked with a club to try to bridge that gap. I think there are some opportunities there, but as I said, just be careful not to step on that landmine of someone else's politics because you don't know what they are. The fourth question, the Zen question, as I said, this is the one that students are tending towards. 3 out of 4 students who come to me who have already written an essay have responded to this prompt, which asks for your place of contentment. 70% of those 75% of essays had to do with water. So they were talking about being on the beach, being on the canal, being on the lake. Be careful. Okay, everybody feels contentment when they're on vacation. Okay, so that's not something unique about you. So think about a good answer to this question. I've seen, I had a student who's a musical theater person, and when I think about musical theater people, and when college reps think about them, they think they're kind of ta-da kind of kids, right? They're out there, they're extroverted, they like to be the center of attention. So he wrote a beautiful essay about the fact that during his study hall, he would sneak into the school's music room and just play the piano and sing, all for himself, without an audience. And it was one of the ways that he sort of dealt with stress and let go of all that pressure and tension, and showed his love of music as an art form, as a form of expression, separate from the applause that he received for doing that. I think that's an interesting way to think about that question. Something that brings you contentment that no one would know other than you. And then the last question, the Rite of Passage question, it seems to be calling for a response of, you know, a bar mitzvah or a quinceañera, or some sort of, you know, getting your driver's license, some sort of a event that marked your transition from childhood to adulthood. But I also think that there's an opportunity there. Okay, as an 18-year-old kid, they don't expect that you actually have become an adult. What they're looking for there is for you to describe something in your journey that has led you to grow and mature beyond where you were before. So maybe it's, you know, your parents had a divorce and you took on some additional responsibilities in your family. Maybe you had younger siblings. Maybe you got a job to help out financially. Those are the kinds of things. And again, if there's any bitterness that you had to take on those extra responsibilities and you don't feel proud of what you've accomplished, you don't want to address that question because it will come through. So think about, you know, from your own perspective, if you've noticed in yourself that you've grown or matured in a certain way, then that's certainly a story worth sharing. And as I said in my previous video on my book, Distinguish Yourself on the Common App, you also want to place that core essay within the context of your larger common application and make sure that you're not repeating information that's already been stated elsewhere. I wish you the best of luck with your college essay. Write from the heart, and I know you'll do well. Thank you.